Hey everybody, Josh again, and in this video we're going to be covering plays, which is Apollo terminology for powerful automations we can make either just using Apollo data or integrating data from our CRM to address automation throughout the life cycle of our customers and prospects. It's one of my favorite topics, so let's get right into it. All right, everybody, so here I am in Apollo, and I'm not going to click on the settings wheel in the top right-hand corner like we do in so many of these videos. Instead, I'm going to click on the plays button along the top, or you may see it along the side depending on the UI that you have. So plays, we have a lot of automations that we give you right out of the box that you can view by hitting all templates. There's a few that we recommend right out of the gate. Work companies researching your category, automatically hit no-shows, and sequence for outdated contacts. There's a lot that you can set up with templated automation right here. But before we get into any of those, I want to show you how to create a play from scratch and give you a couple example plays that I'd recommend that you set up, and we can go from there. So I'm going to go ahead and hit create from scratch on the bottom right-hand corner, and now we're into the play creation wizard. So a couple things we have to decide right out of the gate. The first is, do we want to be targeting individual people or companies with this play? Companies, obviously, you're going to be a little bit more limited on what you can do. You can't add a company to a sequence from a play, but you can create a task or an alert or something like that for your team. For this example, though, we are going to stick with people, which I think is probably the more common play type you're going to create. And I want to show you an example of how we can create a play to automatically add inbound leads to a sequence. This is one of the most powerful and highest value things you can do with Apollo. Not only do you want to be building a pipeline by going outbound, but you also want to be reaching out to the people who are trying to get in touch with you from your website as quickly as possible. So we'll say inbound demo requesters. And this play automatically adds inbound leads to a sequence. Now, we have to decide a configuration. Do we want to run this play on a particular date or schedule or when a specific event occurs? There's an appropriate time and place for either of these, so let's talk through it a little bit. If I was creating a play, for example, that was going to go add all of the people who had marked me as spam to a do not contact list, and then add all new people to replace those people into my sequences, I would want to do that maybe on a daily basis, for example. But if I want to work a lead that just requested to talk to me from my website, I want to do that as soon as possible, not on a predetermined schedule. We're going to go ahead with when a specific event occurs, and we're going to have to now select the event. We have a variety of options we can choose from. You have a lot of things that you can do based on their interaction with your email content. So if they open an email, you can say, hey, create a task for my team to call them when they open the email. That would be a play that you could create. If they click on your email, which I don't recommend you track clicks for deliverability purposes, but you can do it. If they click on your email, you can do the same thing, add them to a call or send them a LinkedIn message. If they unsubscribe from your email, maybe you want to replace that contact with somebody else at the same company. Lots of different options here. In this example, we're going to say contact created, and then we can click advanced options. So that will let us determine how often somebody should be able to be added to a play. So what that means is, let's say somebody comes to your website, fills out your contact me form, and they become a lead. And then they do the same thing 6 months from now. Should they be able to be added to the play every time? Or do you only want this to be eligible to somebody to happen one time? It's up to you to decide. In this example, I think every time is fine. Now we're into filters. So this is where Apollo's plays differs from something like Outreach's triggers or HubSpot workflows or Process Builder in Salesforce. Normally, you would expect to see some Boolean logic here, but because Apollo has the prospecting data of over 260 million people and millions of companies, instead of adding Boolean logic, we can just add filters from the search tab in Apollo right in the play builder. So I'll go ahead and hit add filters. So what I have done here is I have mapped already using my CRM integration, which if you're curious about, watch the video on the CRM integrations. I have mapped my custom fields from my CRM into Apollo. And I have a few fields that I can use, like lead source. So as long as I have mapped a lead source field from my CRM to Apollo, I can select that from the custom field here. And now, because I want to create a play to automatically contact my inbound leads, I can just select if it's any of inbound. This is something I had set up in the past. So if a lead is an inbound lead, then they'll appear over here on the right. Look, that's me. I can go ahead and hit save filters. So what I've done so far is I've said, hey, I'm going to create an automation for people who, when their contact is created and their status is inbound, then we have to choose something to do to them. Out of the box, Plays will recommend that you create an alert to take an action. I'm going to turn that off. An alert is, to me, not incredibly useful in this instance. Instead, what we want to do is we want Apollo to actually do a lot of work for us. So we have to choose what we want it to do. We have to automate an action. And there's a lot of different things we could choose from. We can say, do nothing, wait, right? We could update a contact field, or add to a list, remove from a list. But what I want to do is I want to add it to a sequence. And the sequence I'm going to choose, I have to have already created the sequence. We have a whole video on sequences, so take a look there. I want to choose my inbound lead sequence. And now I get to choose who do I want to send that email from. If I have lead routing set up in my CRM already and a contact owner is assigned at the moment somebody enters the CRM, then I can just send it from the owner. But if I don't have that set up, then I can just round robin it between the people on my team. I can say, hey, round robin between me and Vance. And I also have the ability to rotate the mailbox if I've connected multiple mailboxes from each of my users. But then I can just hit save. And so I've now created a play that's going to automatically take my inbound leads. As soon as they come into my CRM, they're going to go into a sequence. And all I have to do to turn that on is I have to hit activate play. Don't forget, that's an important part. Hit activate play. There's a lot more you can do with Plays. And in a previous video about stages, I created this stage saying follow up in 3 months. So I'm going to show you another automation you can make, and then we'll talk a little bit about the template plays that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and hit create from scratch again, and I'm back to targeting people. And this is my follow-up list. So the context for this, if you didn't see the stages video, was sometimes when we're going outbound, or even if we're working inbound, we don't get a yes or no. What we hear from people is, I could be a good fit for this, but not right now. So what I want to do is I want to work those leads. I don't want to just let those people fall out of my pipeline, right? I want to be following up with them in 3 months or in 6 months, but I don't want to have to keep that reminder in my brain. I don't want to have a long checklist of tasks to do. So instead, I'm just going to create an automation for it. And what I'm going to say is when a specific event occurs. So when a contact is updated and the field, the contact stage is follow up in 3 months, then, and we can now even say a previous value. So we could say, if I was approaching, meaning I had emailed or called them, and then it went to follow up in 3 months, now what I want to do is I want to create a task, or I want to add them to a sequence. So I'm going to duplicate my Apollo instance. I'm going to go into Engage. I can create a new sequence from scratch, and I'll say follow-up sequence. All right. And what I'll do here is I'll add a step for a phone call. But instead of immediately adding somebody to the sequence, I'm going to choose 90 days. So 3 months after I mark them as bad timing or a follow-up in 3 months, I can add them to a sequence automatically, and I will get a task. And then I can edit this task a little bit to say, this person said they were interested, but not right now. And I'll edit that a little bit. 90 days ago, call them to check in. And then I can turn this sequence on. Okay, so now if I go back to my plays builder, what I've just done is I've used that stage that I set up earlier, follow up in 3 months. When somebody enters that stage, then we're going to add them to a sequence. And I think I'm going to have to refresh this page really quickly. And now I can add them to follow-up sequence. Okay, so I've already walked you through 2 plays that we can set up from scratch using a custom stage that we created or a custom field that we mapped in from our CRM, but we can also create plays based on just what exists in Apollo using Apollo's incredible prospecting data. I'm going to show you one more because I'm conscious of time. I can spend an hour or more talking about this, but we're just going to hit work companies researching your category. And what this does is it uses the buyer intent data that we have in the Apollo platform to add people to a list or to create a task for your team to go add people from that company into a sequence or otherwise into your prospecting. So we're going to go ahead and hit create. Now this one is set up a little bit differently. This targets companies, and we already have our description pre-filled, and it runs on a specific day or schedule. It's set up to run every day, once a day. And I'll set this up to run early in the morning, starting tomorrow or starting on Wednesday. I'll set this up to run at 5 a.m. So before any of my early bird SDRs get on, and it's never going to end. And what we're going to do is we can now hit edit filters, but it's already got some set up out of the box. It's going to choose an intent topic and it's going to choose an intent score. And we can edit those filters even more. So we're looking at company filters now, not people filters. But what we're looking for is if we scroll down, we're saying, hey, if they have buyer intent for any one of these topics, and we can edit what that intent is. We can say, hey, it's high score, and then we hit edit for the topic. There's something like 1,600 topics we can choose from. In this example, I'm just going to make one up. I had set up earlier graphic design service providers. So what's actually happening here is we're looking for any company who, based on what they're doing on the internet, we think are interested in graphic design services. Okay, so we can narrow those filters down because there's probably a lot of people who meet that criteria, a lot of companies. So I'm just going to narrow this down, and I'm going to say, give me companies who have between 50 and 100 employees. And this is saying, hey, there's too many people, basically. This play will not be active until after 8 o'clock in order to maximize company inclusion. Cool. Now I can choose what to do with it, right? I can set up an alert if I want to. I could add these accounts to a list. I could say, hey, these companies are researching graphic design. And I can set a field for that if I want. I can assign an owner to it. I could say, hey, Vance, every morning I'm going to send you a new list of companies who are interested in graphic design. And then if I wanted to, I could even create a task. And I can add more steps if I want to a play, right? I can add as many steps as I want. But I can set a task here for Vance, and I can say, hey, go add 3 people or people from this account to a sequence. So that's a great example of automating part of the prospecting process, right? I don't always want to be coming into Apollo and doing prospecting manually. I want to automate that as much as possible. So I can take this even further. I can make another play, and I could actually automate my prospecting entirely. I can come in here to add filters, right? And I can say, hey, we're going to go ahead and target people, and I can just add whatever filtering I've done. If I've set up personas before, I can say, show me the marketing agency owners or whoever I've added into my persona. I want you to every day come in here, take those people. That's how I'll set it up. I'll say, hey, on a specific date, let's say every day or every week, find people who meet that criteria for my persona. And then what I'm going to do is first, I'm going to add them to a list. And what that will do is that will use a credit to get their contact information, right? And then I can add another step. First, it's going to add a list, add them to the list. And the second thing I can do is I can add them to a sequence. And using plays in this way, I can actually automate a lot of the manual work that I would otherwise be doing in Apollo or in any other tool. I think this is the power of having the data and the engagement in the same platform. I can specify my prospecting criteria, and then I can add them to a sequence, or I can create a task. I can do whatever I want here. So a ton of power that you can create with plays. There's just so much more you can do. You can chain plays together. I highly recommend you spend some time here figuring out what's right for you. Otherwise, that's all I have for this video. I'll see you in the next one.